All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Efficiency of Boards and Commissions for Wednesday, February 19th, 2025. This meeting is being held pursuant to KRS 61.826 and Council Rule 5A. I'm Councilwoman Jennifer Chappell, and I am the chair of this committee, and I am joined by my vice chair, Councilman Kevin Bratcher. And then we're also joined today in chambers by committee members, Councilman J.P. Leninger, Councilman Kevin Kramer, Councilman Marcus Winkler, and we're joined virtually today by Councilman Scott Reed. So hello, Scott. And I don't think that any other council folks are in the chambers today. I do also just want to take the point of privilege to say that as the only woman on this committee, I hope that we're able to get some work done with all you men, but I have good promise. I'd be remiss not to say something as a co-chair of the Women's Caucus. I'm excited to have the opportunity to kick off our ad hoc committee in examining the efficiency of Louisville Metro's boards and commissions. This isn't a position or a committee that I asked for. But for those council people that know me, I think that it comes to no surprise that I've been selected to lead this committee. In the last 2 years that I've served on the Government Oversight and Accountability Committee, I spent a lot of time trying to go beyond the appointment and understand the board or commission. It became obvious that Louisville Metro has created a myriad of fractured and inefficient boards and commissions, and some that might be superfluous or some that might be underutilized. So I'm really excited to look at how these boards and commissions impact our city and how we can make everything run a little bit smoother. In a moment, I'll give a presentation with information that I've gathered that will paint a clearer picture of the current landscape of our boards and commissions. This information has been assembled using the boards and commissions list on the Louisville Metro website and independently collected data. I want to thank multiple entities for assembling and providing information, including Councilman Anthony Piagentini and my legislative researcher for the District 15 office, Kylie Streel. I also want to recognize Althea Jackson, who I was hoping could be here today. She might be joining us later, but she's the Director of Boards and Commissions, and we will be working with her closely on this committee as we go through all of these boards and commissions. After the presentation, we'll have a conversation on what we want to accomplish with this committee and how we're going to go about doing that. For me, it was kind of interesting creating the agenda for this meeting because a lot of times we don't just dive into conversation and workshopping things, and so we've got there's not a set agenda, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how this conversation can kind of outline how we move on with the next 13 meetings throughout the rest of the year for this committee. So if we're ready, let's just dive into the presentation. Mission for this body is to streamline the boards and commissions to operate more effectively. The objectives are to assess the structure, function, and efficiency of each board and commission, identify overlaps, redundancies, and gaps in services, and recommend restructuring, consolidation, or dissolution where appropriate. The goals for the year, we're going to have some short-term goals. And that's to complete a comprehensive review and analysis of all of these boards. I think this is going to be a theme that occurs throughout this meeting, these meetings throughout the year. And we're definitely going to kickstart a big part of that conversation today. And we're also going to engage with stakeholders and gather input and insight. So we really want to make sure that we're talking to the people in the committee, the people that are impacted by the committee, and also those who are responsible for appointing or interacting with these committees. And then long-term goals will be to propose actionable recommendations at the state level, and then also implement and monitor outcomes at a local level. So I put together a boards and commissions overview. Like I said, I used a lot of the boards and commissions dashboard that is on our Louisville Metro site. I'm not sure when that was updated, but I'm going to say that was done in the last year or so because it's greatly updated and improved from the last time that I saw it. And so data is pulled from that as well as other presentations. And so all of this has been verified. And then, so I do want to remind that as boards and commissions, you know, we have GOA that just appointed new people today. So these are all living, breathing statistics. But I think that we can rely on them pretty well for this presentation. So there's 66 boards and commissions. And of all of those 66 boards and commissions, there are 672 total seats. Currently, 612 of those are filled and 60 of those are vacant. So we have about 91% that are filled and then about 9% that are vacant. 45 out of 66 of those are under a Kentucky statute authority, which means that, you know, the state of Kentucky requires us to have these boards and commissions. I also wish that, is there B and C's or something? I'm getting tired of saying boards and commissions, but need to figure out how to shorten that. But I wanted to point out the 21 boards and commissions that are not under KRS, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but these are ones that to be mindful of as we're having these conversations, since they're not regulated by KRS, KRS statute. These are ones that we have a little bit more flexibility and say in how they operate and how they are comprised. So just as a reminder, I think in your dashboard, you will have access to this presentation, and then I'll be sending out this presentation as well as some spreadsheets that you all can access with this information. I want to be as transparent as possible, so don't reach for your pencil and take a lot of notes if you feel the need to. Gender breakdown for our boards and commissions, we have 57% that are male, 43% that are female. Party breakdown, 59% Democrat, 24% Republican, 17% independent. Ethnicity, 62% is Caucasian, 30% African American. Asian or Pacific Islander is 3%, and then we also have Hispanic and other, I think that's 2%, and then 1% is for American Indian, Alaskan Native. A district breakdown, I know that this is one that we all really love to dissect, but it gives a breakdown of how many of those seats are taken up by each district, and I don't think it comes as any surprise, maybe a little validation, that District 16 has 13% of the seats on our boards and commissions. Next is District 8 at 11%, and I do just want to point out that that is a very active district, but we also have to keep in mind as we're going through these boards and commissions that there are some that require residency. For example, Downtown Management District requires some folks in District 4, Bardstown Overlay District, Nulu. Those might have an impact on these numbers. And so I want to keep that in mind. But another thing that I really want to point out about this list is that green star that's next to other. Right now we have 10% of the seats on our boards and commissions that are filled by people that are outside of Jefferson County, and that could also be folks that live in Indiana. I'm not going to call out anybody, but you know who you are. But I think that if we're looking for representation, we really need to address that number right there. Oh, sure.
Can I ask one question about that point specifically?
Absolutely.
So does this count include, so for example, the Arena Authority, right? The governor appoints certain representatives for the Arena Authority Board. Is that counted in this number, or these are only the ones that we have oversight over?
This is all 672 seats.
Okay, so the governor seats, which do not require residency in Jefferson County, could, okay, thank you.
Right. And that was one thing that was difficult in putting together this presentation, because we will get into which ones we have oversight into and which ones we appoint by council. Sorry, we approve by council. But there's so many weeds to get into in this information, and so we really wanted to keep it high level. But very good question, and yes, this is representative of all of those seats.
If I could ask about that question at that point. I know there are, and I don't need to know exactly which ones or how many necessarily, but I know there are a number of boards that we don't have approval over. Is that number of boards that we don't have approval over included in the 600 plus, or is that are we only looking at boards that we have approval over?
Sure. This is all of them, not just the ones that we have approval over.
Whether we have approval or not?
Right.
Because there are some boards that the mayor appoints that we never see the appointments.
Sure, there's some
He
of
tells
them-
us, but we don't.
Sure. There's some that the mayor appoints. There's some, like you said, the governor appoints. There's some that are like the medical board. There's one where it's like the largest institutions put up 2 people. So, but this number is representative of every single seat, whether or not we approve them or not as council.
Okay. Okay.
And these numbers jive with a PowerPoint present, or not a PowerPoint, but a very helpful Excel spreadsheet that Councilman Piagentini presented to me, and then I fact-checked that with information from Althea. So both of their numbers matched completely, which was
Yeah,
a
I'm
point of
thinking-
gratitude for me.
I'm thinking about it from the 30,000-foot level as per your request.
Sure.
And
So that number is all
Right.
672 of those seats.
and it occurs to me that is going to be a part of our conversation because we're not just going to look at the ones that we currently have approval over. We're going to be looking at state statute and how it applies to these boards as well. So I guess it is important that we include all of those then. Okay, thank you. I was trying to get my head around, if the governor appoints them, why do we care? And the answer is we're going to be looking at state statute as well. Thank you.
Sure,
Answer my own question.
And we'll get into more of that in a moment. Yeah, I think, yeah, it's okay. Well, this is one that I think that we should all consider is size breakdown. So the average board and commission size is 10.18, which that could be a whole number because 0.18 of a human, but the largest boards and commissions that we have is over on the left side. And so you can see that the largest one is the Science Center Board of Directors at 40. Next, we have the Domestic Violence Prevention and Coordinating Council, and that one has 36. Zoo Foundation Board 35, Kentuckiana Works 26, Brightside 23, Downtown Management District 22. On the right side, we have the smallest boards and commissions. So you can see there that the smallest one that we have is the Riverside Farnsley Mormon Landing with 2 people. And then all the rest of them have 3, and that's Land Bank Authority, Suburban Fire, and Suburban Fire for Anchorage, Fern Creek, J-Town, and St. Matthews. And I do have this note that's down here that Mayor Greenberg recommended the following in his state legislative priorities. And he specifically pointed out the Land Bank Authority. And he recommended to revise KRS 65.360 to increase the size of the Land Bank Board to make it easier to reach quorum and conduct business of Land Bank. Currently, there are only 3 members, whereas best practices across the country shows a minimum of 5 board members. And that was copy and pasted directly from that legislative priority, so I'm sorry if that reads a little clunky, but I think that we can all get the gist that all of those that have small numbers of boards should probably, that's something that we should really consider in getting them to have more folks on them. Some miscellaneous facts for you to consider. 3.09 years is the average board and commission term. Every board has a term between 2 and 4 years. Only a few, I think maybe 3 I found have actual term limits. So I don't know if more have that, and that information just hasn't been put onto the website. But this is just the information that I've been able to gather from the information that I've been given. There's about 32 boards that require council approval. So keep in mind we have 66, and so we're looking at about half of those requiring council approval. I also just want to say that some data is missing from the boards and commissions website. That is linked, but I don't think that this is a PDF, so I can't click on it. But just so you guys can see the boards and commissions website. But there's some information that is missing on there, so there might be a few more that we have approval over. The majority of the boards and commissions meet monthly, although others meet quarterly, bi-monthly, once a week, or bi-weekly. But again, some data is missing from the boards and commissions website on meeting frequency, so that number, there's not a quantitative number there, but I think that solidly, even with information filled in, that most of these boards meet monthly. I hate when people put a lot of words on a slide, but that is exactly what I've done here, my friends. So I just wanted to speak to this. I want to point out the opportunities of this committee, because one of the avenues that I want us to go down is there's obviously a lot of things that we can do on this committee, but how do we look at this together and say, how do we move forward? And so some of those things that we can be doing, categorizing boards and commissions by their primary purpose, and so seeing which ones, where are the holes in that? Do we have a lot that are based on regulatory environments, but we need more to assist on the operational side? So we really need to consider that in balance. Illustrating which departments or agencies that all of these boards and commissions collaborate or work with within Louisville Metro. I think that that's something really important, because we have a lot of departments, and so in the hierarchy of things, we really want to make sure that these commissions are working with committees and ultimately with council. Identifying average member attendance and highlighting boards that struggle to meet quorum. I think that goes back to that inefficiency of board size. Showing how each board's mission aligns with Louisville Metro's broader strategic goals. I debated putting that up there, because what are our strategic goals? I don't know if that would go, our 2040 plan is probably what most folks would say, but I know that there might be some disagreement with that. Also, gathering insights on public participation and community impact. What is the output of this board, and what are we getting from it? Identify which ones have made significant contributions to policy changes or have the ability to influence policy. I know that as legislators, we can all appreciate a little help, especially from the experts. Conduct a breakdown of budgetary support, if any, for each board or commission. One thing that I didn't have the information, but I believe some of these boards and commissions get a stipend or a per diem, but I don't have that information. So it might be interesting to look at, what that is, but also within each department in Louisville Metro, if they have any funds that are going towards supporting any of these boards or commissions. Conduct a cost-benefit analysis of operational costs with output and community impact. I think that kind of ties in with something that we touched on earlier. Comparing our boards and commission structure with similar cities to identify best practices. Maybe there's a few other cities that have some boards or commissions that, we say that would be really novel for us to have here in Louisville, and so how can we implement that on a local scale? Create a heat map or network diagram to show relationships and overlaps between boards and commissions. I think that this is one that we see pretty often in, why do we have this if you're also doing this work? So we want to eliminate those redundancies. Gather feedback from board members, council members, and stakeholders just to analyze the efficiency and need. And then also identify common challenges. So what are the things that are preventing these boards from reaching their maximum output? So here I wanted to kind of go into a discussion on what you want this committee to focus on, and then how do you think that we should move forward? And before we dive into that conversation, and please remember to cue in, thank you. I wanted to give some examples just out of conversations that I've had with some folks, and things that we can address here as this committee. It's not my suggestions, but I think it's important just to kind of put it all out on the table and see if there's anything that resonates with any of the committee members. So, for example, VAPSTAT consists of Urban Renewal Board, the Land Bank Authority, and the Vacant Property Review Commission. Do we need all three of these separate entities if they're all meeting as one? I know that there's been discussion to adjust the statute for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to identify a nonprofit developer instead of a for-profit developer in those bylaws. We also don't have anyone overseeing or implementing the Anti-Displacement Commission. That was a torch that we all know is being carried by former Councilman Ja'Cory Arthur, and so who's going to be the one to make sure that that work is continuing? Is party affiliation still relevant in light of Metro Council and mayoral elections going nonpartisan? That's something that we really need to consider. And so when we're sitting here saying, oh, well, they're a Republican, they're a Democrat, if we're not putting those labels on us, then why should we do that with our boards and commissions? The Redevelopment Authority, should this be renamed to something more in line with their purpose, such as Naval Ordnance Redevelopment Board? The Parks Advisory Commission, when do they meet? When is the last time they met? Why does this board have 6 out of 9 positions vacant? The Medical Center Commission of Jefferson County, I didn't even formulate a question on that. I just put a bunch of question marks. So, those are just kind of, I wanted to kind of put those out there so you can think of what are the things that we want to tackle, because some of those are a lot more micro, and we really need to be able to do this at a macro level as well. And so adjusting that scope is something that I'm really hoping that we can do collaboratively here as a committee. And so, a couple more things. Do we gather metrics about ages? Do we care about that? Also, are there any committees that go before GOA that are not currently that we feel like Metro Council should, whether or not we have a appointing authority? So I know I just put a lot on you all. There's a lot to digest in that presentation, but I'm going to go into the queue now and see. Sure, I'm going to give it over to my vice chair to say something, and then we'll go on.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be the vice chair here. And Chair, you've done a great job on this presentation. I can tell you've been doing your homework. And all I can bring really as a freshman is some of the experience I had at the state. Ever since I was down there like 3 decades ago, they were always talking about we have too many boards and they don't do enough. Just the same things we've got here. And I remember Governor Bevin started this movement for super board. Like construction, you put all the HVAC electricians all into one big super board. And that didn't last long until they wanted to break that down. And it's funny how one party was pushing for that super board and there was such resistance from the other party. And then when they decided a few years later to break it down, both parties did a polar opposite, fighting what they were fighting against 3 or 4 years before that. My only point in all that is I think this is a great presentation, and we've got our work cut out for us because, a lot of people, there's not, from my experience, there's not a whole lot of the community that wants to get involved with boards, but the ones that do are in it 110%. So just got to parse all that out. And also, Scott Reed wants to say a word. He said he couldn't cue in. He wanted me to tell you that. So thank you for chairing this. And so far, I really think we're on to something good here.
Thank you. If there's anything I know how to do, it's put together a PowerPoint presentation. Councilman Winkler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would, first, in the spirit of your grading of organizational charts, I would give you a presentation, a solid A. So very well done, and I think really helps guide the conversation. So start with that. And then secondarily, in sort of echoing Vice Chair Bratcher's comments, one of the things that, he mentioned that you do have people that are really interested, and you don't have a lot of people interested, but those that are interested are very interested, right? And one of the pieces of feedback that I get and that I might ask us to add to the list in terms of our charge is, it's my understanding, I've not been on the side of trying to be on a commission, so I can only sort of speak to this anecdotally, right? But it's my understanding from some that have applied that they don't really, I'll use the word transparency, but I don't mean it in sort of the, like, that it's like backroom deal. I just mean that I don't think that they feel like they have a clear, if they're not selected, that they have a clear understanding of why they weren't selected. And I understand it may not be possible if you've got I'm going to guess we don't have thousands of applicants, but if you've got thousands of applicants that you can't give feedback to every single person, right? But I do get the impression that people don't really have a clear understanding of why they weren't selected, or like, hey, here's the makeup of the board. We already have 3 people from District 17. So, appreciate your interest. We'll keep you on the list, but we can't really in good conscience put a 4th person on this. We need geographic diversity or whatever it is. But I think that is perhaps an opportunity where the administration could have some greater transparency for folks why they weren't selected and maybe what other opportunities exist. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilman Reed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I croak a little bit, it's because I've been sick all week, and I apologize for not being there. So I've told the chair many times that I think that this is a great ad hoc committee, and this is something that I think we can really do some good things with. I guess one of my questions is, number one, how much leeway will we have to really get inside of what a board does? Does that mean that we can, bring somebody in to talk to them, ask them about their agenda, ask them about what their goals are, what their accomplishments have been? I guess, how deep of a dive are we able to take here?
That little cutie looks like it needs to cue in.
Yes.
I really hate the expression, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? But I think that this is applicable in this sense because this is a really big elephant, and how are we going to tackle this? And so that's what I'm hoping to come out of this conversation is, what does that next meeting look like? I think I pulled it up, and if we were to call in all 65 of these boards and commissions and have them come in and talk to us, we would have to do at least 4 per meeting. And that's also factoring in time for us to have conversation to actually accomplish something. So I don't know if that is an effective use of our time, but maybe identifying the boards that we do want to go after, or maybe the boards that we do have control over, or what are the ones that have really glaring issues that we need to tackle. And so what does progress look like for this committee? Is it an overhaul of all 66? Is it recommendations for all 66? Or is it just fixing a few kinks here and there? I think that that's what I'm hoping to come out of this conversation, because I don't have much of an appetite for an elephant, but I'm hoping that you all will, join me in the feast.
Yes, I understand. And I think one thing to remember, and I wasn't sure if it was Councilman Bratcher or Councilman Winkler that mentioned this, is that these people, they serve, they volunteer, and we don't want to make this so onerous that we don't, that we get the reputation as being this governing body that's just going to be all on top of them. Okay, I think we need to balance that, but at the same time, there've been a couple of times when either I or Chair Chappell have asked somebody that's applying for a board or to be reinstated to a board or reapplication, what is your goal? I mean, what's a typical agenda like? And they've not been able to answer anything. So, I'm hopeful that there's going to be a happy medium in here, and that we can get a better idea of what these, what the boards that we identify, what their goals are, how often they meet, how far along are they in terms of meeting their goals. And here's another question: and do these boards write a report that goes to the mayor or that comes to us? I've never seen anything like that. But how do we know? And this is a question maybe to ask: how do we know, what they even have discussed, or what their plans are for the future?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that I'll be sending out to the committee is a spreadsheet, and it has a link, or it breaks down when the last time that each board met, and then it has a link to their minutes. And so I think it'll be a lot of responsibility on all of us as committee members to dive into that and see that information. So that was one thing, and Althea's got a list, Aaron has a list, Tony has a list, and we started creating a list. I think that those are all the lists, and all of those lists were different, but they all had the same information on them. And so getting all of that information into a digestible manner was really difficult. But, when we're looking at these boards and commissions, are there ones that we have picked out that we really want to look at? Do we want to start with looking at the ones that have the least amount, the most the highest number of board and commission members? Do we want to look at the ones that we do have jurisdiction over versus the ones that are under KRS? Or about 32 that we have that we do approve and appoint. So looking from feedback from you all to say, at our next meeting, this is where we really put the pedal to the metal.
Could I
It-
say, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
My last question, can you email us this presentation, please?
absolutely.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your work on this.
Oh, no problem.
Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, do you think it'd be a good idea to, like the ones, I've heard these, I haven't verified, but I've heard that there's some out there haven't met for years. Have you heard that?
I have, and that's one of the things that's kind of difficult. While I'm sitting here, is there an opportunity for you to pull up the boards and commissions list that I referred to that's on our Louisville Metro website? Just Google Louisville Boards and Commissions. And so that's where a lot of where a lot of information from this presentation came from, not in terms of breaking it down demographically, but the ones that meet and don't meet. There's some that just don't have any information whatsoever on them. Like the Louisville Convention and Visitors Bureau, no real information there. The same as the Parks Advisory Committee, the Revenue Commission. There was just not a lot of information on any of these boards. And so it was really difficult for us to figure out anything. And so is that a suggestion? And where we start are the ones that have a lot of blank spaces. What are they doing?
Maybe we could do it like the Board of Elections does it. If a person hasn't voted in a while, you send them a postcard. If they don't show up within a year or a few months, or make the proactive thing, hey, I'm still here, they just get removed. Maybe send something to each board and say, come ask the chair if you can address the board and see why your existence.
Absolutely.
Explain your existence.
So Amy pulled up this is with our Louisville Metro, so if you go to the Boards and Commissions page, then it has a link to this. This is what I was saying, I think is relatively new within the last year. But it gives an overview of what each of these boards are, and you can click on one of them, and it can go to, let's do the Commission for Persons with Disabilities, just because I know that Councilman Reed is on that one. So you can go here and you can see the description, vacancies, size, term length, term limit, and then how they're appointed. And then you can also see the member roster here. So it has when, what term they're in, when they were appointed, and when their term ends. And so all of this information is here on the site. Now, if you want to get into more detail and get their minutes, then you have to do a little bit more digging on our Louisville Metro website and go to that respective one. And keep in mind that we could break this down into, there's some that are housing focused, some that are, economic development centered. There are some that are, tourism based. So we could always break it down into what are the priorities that we have as a city that we want to focus on, and then how do we go about looking at those boards and commissions that align with that priority. For example, public safety or housing. Is that something that's really important to us? This one? Huh. Okay. So some of these, and I assume that the information is up to date, but there's one, just go to if you could go to the Louisville Medical Center Commission for Jefferson County, is that it? So yeah, operates and manages, performs all functions necessary to carry out the operations of the medical center steam and chilled water plant and medical center laundry. What medical center? Possibly a center off of Abram Flexner Boulevard. There's a steam plant, but we're not sure if it's this steam plant, who we have 15 members on. And, you know, this is one that we don't oversee, so they never come before us, so we probably never questioned it. But what do these people do? Like, you know, I think that that stands for what's going on there. The cemetery board is another one where there's not a lot of information there, and I'm not sure when they meet. I know that there's a lot of conversations surrounding our cemeteries right now and the upkeep of them. So is that a board that we should have with 5 members that's doing a little bit more work? And I hate that the back button doesn't take you back to the list, but whatever. Yes, Councilman Leninger.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the question about the partisan makeup of boards and, how concerned we should be with that. I'm on government accountability, and so yesterday we appointed a number of people yesterday, specifically for the downtown board. There was several that were independent. One person that was listed as other, which I thought was, what other? I want to know which other. But yeah, I think it is a great question about, how much that should pertain to what is now a, nonpartisan chamber here. As a segue, going from that, those appointments to the Downtown Development Board, there were, of course, many of those seats are reserved for people involved in particular industries downtown. And I think that's another balance question that we should consider that we don't, obviously, which is class. The vast majority of the people serving on these boards are not average working class, everyday people. Many of these boards specifically preclude their participation based on what are the requirements for different seats. That's something I think would be great if we could take a look at and have a little more average working class people's participation.
Just curious, what would be the measurable there?
Well, I think when you have a board that requires, we need an executive from banking and we need an executive from hotels, and you go down an entire list of board and we have all of these, executive level job requirements from specific industries, it does beg the question, where is the representation of people who maybe staff those industries or just average, open to literally anyone in the public, not just people who are at executive downtown. I think there's a lot of question about why not more people who just live downtown should have participation in that board.
Sure. Thank you for that input. Does anyone else have anything further? The conversation's not done because we're going to have homework.
You said there's some of the boards get a stipend, and what was the other? They get a...
Some of them get like a per diem.
Per diem.
So does anyone have an example of one of those boards? I might want to say the Planning Commission. But I don't know. So, that's something else that maybe our next meeting, we can have some questions and we can see if Althea can come and join us and talk to us and address some of those questions.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And then when it comes to what's next, and this was the homework that I was going to kind of assign as combing through all of this information and then deciding which ones of these boards, like maybe if we could all present a list of like 5 that we want to look into, and then there might be overlap in that, but I could assume that, some of these are kind of driving itself, or ones that I'm not as concerned with. For example, maybe the Downtown Management District, or the Juneteenth Jubilee Commission. Those aren't ones that are high on my priority list for us to really dig into. But what are the other ones that we want to say, hey, what is this medical center steam plant laundry facility? Does that sound agreeable?
Does to me.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Winkler.
Yeah, my guess is some of these we'll be able to eliminate pretty quickly. I mean, I don't want to speak out of turn. I did a little Googling on the steam plant. From what I can determine, I think it's a shared service by all the hospitals, right? That it was sort of built by the hospitals, and they provide the heating and air conditioning for all of the hospitals in the district. So my guess is the board is made up of representatives from each of those, since it's a shared service. So again, that's a 2-minute Google and an educated guess. But if that's the case, then it might be, okay, like, not why, we don't have any jurisdiction, and why do we care, right? I mean, if they run a shared power service, right, like, I don't know that we want any say over that.
They might not be on your list, Councilman Winkler, but they might be on mine.
The mechanism to say, for example, eliminate a board, is it simply an ordinance?
That, it all depends. So we have the around 32 that we oversee, or I'm so sorry, 21 of those are by Louisville Metro that we have control over. So the remainder of those, I think 40-something, we would have to send an appeal to Frankfurt. And I feel like that we've got some good folks on this council that have good relationships with people that might listen to, I don't want to call them demands, but suggestions. And I think of this kind of similar to the mayor and how he made a suggestion for, increasing a board size. I think that that's something that's very reasonable that we could probably send to Frankfurt and say, hey, we would love for you to consider this. Councilman Kramer.
Well, to that point, you've got included in the 21 boards and commissions that are not under KRS, several fire boards. I don't know. My question is this. Were these fire boards created by the old county form of government and we inherited them when we merged? And therefore, do we have control over them, or is there in fact a state statute that requires a board for any, it would have been considered a volunteer fire department, for any volunteer fire department across the state? I would have thought that fire district boards would be required at the state level, but you have them not under KRS. I'm not challenging whether you have them in the right place. I'm just trying to understand.
Sure. Amy,
that
could
looks
you
like.
go to the list on the Louisville Metro website and then go to, for example,
And the reason I'm not able,
Yeah.
I'm asking the question, I'm processing it as quickly as I can, but there are other fire boards that are not on this list, which
Right.
makes me wonder if some fire boards were in fact mandated by the state and others perhaps not. I just don't know, and so I'm asking those a question.
I think that's a very valid question, and the reason that I have that is because if you go to the boards and commissions list and you look at, so maybe
Suburban fire, yeah.
go to like Fairdale, for example. We can see that there's 7 members, but there's no more information here. Every other board has how appointed, and then that's a field that's filled in. None of these had any sort of indication on how they were appointed. And I believe it's hard to keep track of them because, like, I know that some of them, like we just did Okolona the last time that I was on GOA. So I know that they come in front of us, but that was just information that was not on this list.
So you have the 21 that are not under KRS. You don't have the 45 that are, which is fine. I'm not asking that I'm not pointing out something I'm
thought
not
that would be
challenging
too
your
much for you all.
PowerPoint, right? That's not what I mean to do. I bring that up simply by way of saying, included in the 21, you've got, for example, Jeffersontown, which represents my district, and PRP, but you don't have Anchorage, Middletown. I think Linden has a fire protection district, although I don't know if they've merged in with St. Matthews now. But, there are fire protection districts that aren't listed here. And I'm curious, are they in the 45? I mean, I'm assuming they must be, because I was just talking to Councilman Winkler, and the Anchorage, Linden, Anchorage, Middletown, I'm sorry. I'm convinced Linden's in there. The Anchorage, Middletown Protection District, we do have approval over some of their, and I'm looking at J-Town only has 3 members, which makes me, I don't know if we have approval over that or not. One would have to be an elected person. One would be an appointed firefighter. And I don't know if we. I honestly don't remember. Yeah, but McMahon used to, and they're part of J-Town now.
Anchorage was on there, but it had a KRS statue. I don't know why that one was under KRS.
So that's my question is, so some of the fire protection districts were
So-
created under KRS and some not.
But
Well, the
if
chapter
you-
75 is like Fern Creek. That's KRS.
So Amy, can you go back to the Louisville Metro website, which has the boards and commissions, and then pull up the Anchorage Middletown Fire Department, please? And I just want to remember, there's not a lot of information there. But then when you go down to Anchorage Middletown right there, you can see that it does have a statutory authority and then how appointed, but the other ones just don't have that information on it. So I mean, like, this has always been kind of a point of contention, not to say that they're not, but that information is just not there, and we should have consistent information. So, that could be something that we wanted to just bring in all the fire commissions and understand what they do. And, there's also suburban and urban, suburban and Louisville, and how does that relate to this? And
Actually, they have the suburban fire departments have I don't know what you call it, an organization, an association of sorts. So we could have one person come in and answer these questions. We wouldn't have to have all of them. But yes, I think that's a question we need to be asking.
Can I say something for a second? So I have a spreadsheet that I can send to you all that I had Justin work on. It says it's dated January 2024, so if you ignore the members, because we don't keep it updated with members, but it has the description of the board, it has the member size, but it has more than this. Like for this exact board right here, which is Anchorage Middletown, it says that it's statute, it tells me 75 point, okay, but then it also tells me ordinance authority, LMCO 32.935, and it gives the powers, and it also gives the vacancy appointment details and a little bit more. So I can send that to you all. It was Aaron Horner had asked some questions, and then it gives the description, but it also gives the purpose. So I don't know if they're the same or not, but I'll send it to you all.
Sure. And maybe if you want to send that to me, and then I'll send it to everyone, just because I will send you all of the lists. So again, we have the one from the clerk's office, one from Aaron Horner, one from Piagentini, one from my office.
Aaron's is
Yours
the
is,
same
okay.
place.
So but even then, there's going to be 4 of these lists that people have put together independent of what's online. So we should have consistency of information. And the county attorneys have one as well?
They may. I kind of recall something like that from when I was in the county attorney's office. I cannot guarantee it.
It's proprietary, we can't share it. If you ask me questions specifically, then I can answer those questions for you, but I cannot share it.
Sorry, Nicole. I forgot, I didn't realize that was.
Sure. Would you like to step forward to the microphone and introduce yourself to the committee so we can?
Telling our secrets. Madam Chair, my name is Nicole Pang. I'm an assistant county attorney. Sorry. Madam Chair, my name is Nicole Pang. I'm an assistant county attorney, and
I work with Althea, assisting with the boards and commission appointments, and the county attorney. So if she has questions, she typically calls me, and I can do the research to find out how the appointment happens, what the authority is, if it's an LMCO or if it's a KRS. And we do keep documentation, but it's not something that we can share. I can't give those to you, but I can look if you have a specific question. So I might be able to provide you a resource.
Councilman Kramer.
So this is purely a curiosity. Well, no, it's really not. I think it's very germane to what we're talking about. These boards and commissions were created either by a local government or state government, and therefore we have some responsibility to them. I'm trying to understand how something that was created by a government and therefore should all be in the public domain, it should all be public record. I don't understand how a board or commission and the formation of it could possibly be proprietary, right?
It's
I
county
understand
attorney
some
information.
people's stuff, but, so the county attorney collected up information over years, is what I'm hearing you say. But the information he collected up is all public record, and the
Which
county
that is
attorney.
correct.
And the county attorney is an elected official who's now keeping track of public records. And I don't understand how public records kept by an elected person would not be public record. I mean, surely if we did an open records request, he would be, the county attorney's office would be required to turn over those records and couldn't claim they were proprietary if they're subject to open records. And if it's a board or commission that was created by a government entity, then I don't understand how that could possibly not be subject to open records.
Councilman Kramer, you're more than welcome to make an open records request. I'm just telling you that I'm not permitted to share those. It's something that I keep for my work product.
And I apologize, that did not mean that to suggest that I have any intention of filing open records.
I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm offering my assistance.
No, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I had a similar conversation, 8 years ago with a colleague of mine here. I had a question about something that was going on, and her response was that, she wanted to share that with me, and I pointed out to her then, I could file an open records request, and then she'd have to. It just seems odd to me that we both are in government and we partner and work together and we do all of this stuff, and so my question is this. I guess let me phrase this differently, because I feel like I'm getting into a combative, and I don't mean to. Let me phrase it differently. When you suggest that this is proprietary, I may be operating under the wrong impression, wrong understanding. Is what we're asking for not in fact public record?
No, it's a work, proprietary may have been an incorrect term. It's a work product. And you have to understand our position. We are the counsel for each one of you. For example, you see me all the time because I'm the general counsel for the Revenue Commission. So among those positions, we have to compartmentalize, and there are a lot of things that are attorney-client privilege. The same way, if you call me and say, I want to amend an ordinance, I'm not allowed to share that with any other member or anybody else. So I cannot provide you that information in hard copy. But if you would like to ask me questions, I can certainly refer to my work product. But that is not anything that it's protected. It's an attorney-client document, and it's something that we prepare. We have it, at our disposal so that we can answer your questions. But, it's not kept up to date consistently. So I can't verify that everything is accurate, but it is a source for me to look at if council, if the chair asks me, how is Middletown Fire Board? Who are the members? I can look it up and tell her so that I have a source so that I don't have to go and look at the statute and pull the LMCO. I've got a work product document that I can access and use as a resource. So, I'm happy to provide the information to you all, but I cannot give you the
Okay, so,
information.
just, again, this is just for my sake, right? So you have a working, I'll put in air quotes, you have a working list that you have compiled over time that makes it easy for you to just plug and play very quickly.
Correct.
But this isn't it's not a document, it's not a list of boards and commissions, it's not, you don't have there doesn't exist in the county attorney's office a list of all the different boards and commissions, when they were organized, what the organization
No.
looks like. So that's what I was asking. So if we were to ask you for that, you could go back and look at statutes, you could figure out where all that is, but you don't have a working list like that you're responsible for. So when you say your work product, you're doing the best you can to keep up with what we're asking you to do.
We
And you've
keep
got
a-
access to that, of course.
Right.
But it's not a formalized list or
No,
something
it's
like
not
that.
a
Okay,
formal
thank you.
document.
That helps. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That
Okay,
makes a lot more
sorry.
sense. No, that's fine. I'm just trying to get my head around what that would look like. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, one quick question. Because we're sort of getting spun up about the fact that it says KRS under some and not under others. Should we assume that this is a definitive legal
No.
document? So
No,
it-
this
it
is
could-
not
The answer
accurate.
could be as simple as whoever updated the website didn't know and didn't list something there. Is that a potential answer?
That is accurate, and I might add that all of the boards are required to keep a web page. So, for example, the chair referenced the Revenue Commission and not knowing what happens there. I am conveniently their general counsel, and they have a very robust website. So if you go, I think you can tab into there from that list, or if there is a list on the Metro website where you can see all of the boards and agencies and click onto their names, and you will go to their actual website. So, for example, the Downtown Louisville Management District, they have a very robust website that lists when their meetings are, all their minutes, and who their members are. So, this is a very good list to start with, but I don't know how accurate it is as far as the legal background.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you. And so this probably isn't a question for you, but I'm going to ask it while you're standing there just in case it might be an overlap kind of thing. It doesn't sound like there is a list that says this is the name of the board, this is the purpose of the board, this is when the board was created, and this is the makeup of the board, right? Is there such a list? And is that us? Like, does the clerk's office keep that, or is that the county attorney's office? Is that in the mayor's possession? I mean, Althea, I know, is constantly filling these positions, but where is there such a list that says
I would
this is who they are?
Well, I would
And not
assume that the
person,
mayor,
but-
I can't speak from personal knowledge, but I know that for the boards that the mayor has appointment authority, Althea does have
that list.
something that she accesses to, appoint and to determine whether or not where there are appointments needed. But a lot of the boards don't go through the mayor, so it's an overwhelming process.
Just getting our head on that.
So, in
Thank you.
regard to those, the spreadsheets that I will be sending you, the one that my office has been working on, and we didn't want to be redundant in the information, because I think that there's one that's really good with demographics. There's one that's good with, the one that we set out to make, it does list every single website for each one of those commissions. And so I'm able to tell you right now that of all of them linked, Anti-Displacement Coalition, the Building Code Board of Appeals, the Medical Center Commission of Jefferson County, the Parks Advisory Commission, Tax Appeals Board, Urban Services District Board, and the Suburban Fire District for Fairdale do not have websites, or at least ones that we found. So obviously those are holes that we need to fill. And then there was a reference to a spreadsheet that the clerk's office put together and upkeeps. I pulled that one up, and you don't upkeep it.
We just made it that one time because Aaron Horner requested some information from us.
totally fine. I just wanted to point out that of all of the suburban fire districts, none of them have that information filled out on that form. So it's remiss from Althea's list on the website, it's remiss from Piagentini's, it's remiss from the one that the clerk's office had previously put together. So again, it's not to say that that information doesn't exist out there, but it's disheartening that none of these documents have that information. And so how can we do a better job of having, you know, the authority, which maybe that's what this website should be, but it's just not, it doesn't have the information that we're seeking.
Yeah, so earlier you asked the scope of what we saw as part of this conversation. I think at the very least, I think a first step for us has to be determining when the board or commission was created, by whom, and with what purpose. And we have to at least know that much before we can do anything else, I think. And then, of course, I think the natural outcome of that would be the makeup of the board and things like that. But and as we get into the makeup of the board, some boards and commissions, it's just a matter of, you know, the mayor appoints whoever he wants or whomever does the appointing. Other boards and commissions, you know, I think to Councilman Linegar's point, you know, sometimes it's not a matter of just saying, hey, we want, you know, John Q. Public, who's an average citizen. There are several boards where we're putting people in based on a level of expertise that, you know, even an elected person isn't qualified to serve on that board because they don't possess the expertise that's necessary. So we should know that. We should know this is a board that has, you know, these criteria for members of the board. And again, it sounds like, and I don't mean to throw shade at all, but it sounds like the county attorney's office has done great work whenever they've been asked to look at these things to figure out what that looks like, to give the mayor's people advice, which I think that's awesome. I don't know who to ask, right? I don't want to put it all on the county attorney. I don't want to put it on our clerk. I don't even know where to go with that. Like, surely, well, we don't. I think we have to have a list before you can even start that says, where do they get their authority, right? Like, who created them and who can disband them? I use the 109 board as an example because it's one I know a little bit about. The state gave us permission as a county to create a 109 board. They gave every county permission to create a 109 board. In the process of doing that, one of the reasons that the state was so concerned is any county that had a landfill, they didn't mandate a 109 board, but they pretty much implied that you need to have a 109 board in order to deal with this landfill that you have. So the state created it, or the state gave us the authority to create it, and we created it. We could technically get rid of it. I don't think we actually can because there's some, but in order to even talk about the 109 board, you have to understand that. And if we don't even know where their authority comes from, how can we even begin to have a conversation about what we can do with the 109 board, and then to get into conversations about some of the regulations that the 109 board put into place as non-elected officials having you know, an impact on every person across Jefferson County, and in ways that weren't specific to the way that you know, need to run a landfill, for example. So, and I'm speaking only to the board that attracted some of my attention and that we had to go and figure it out. It never occurred to me that it was a step to get that done. Just felt like that was something that was pretty obvious, or should be.
Sure, and that's one of the goals, is to get all that information in one place, and where should it live, and who should be the steward of keeping it up. I think that there are obvious holes that we need to fill, but it's interesting in looking at all of these that I have pulled up, and again, I will send them to you all, but a lot of the holes are similar on all of them, but I think that they all have different information, but how can we put all of that information into one place? And I also have a list that shows when the last time that there were meeting minutes published for each one. So, you know, that's something that we need to look at I think that when we heard about this board, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, well, is that person good for that board? But instead, it's just kind of like pulling it all the way up and saying like, what are we looking at here? And I think that that's where we are, and that's why it seems kind of difficult to move forward. But I think that once we start going in that direction, that we're going to do great things, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we'll do great things once we have the list. To Councilman Winkler's point, the websites that you're looking at, it feels like so much of this was self-reported. Like the board gave us, like we put out a request and the board gave us information. What I'm seeking is more than what somebody that sits on a board might give us about what that board is. I want to know how they were created and when, and I want to know by whom, and I want to know when they created them, what authorities did they give them, and what was the purpose of the board. So just for history, right, I've been fortunate enough to be here for a long time. One of the first things we did in the first 2 years we were formed as a government, it was incumbent upon us to decide which ordinances which county ordinances we were going to adopt and which we were going to let go, which city ordinances we would adopt and which we would let go, which boards and commissions we would accept and which we wouldn't, and which boards and commissions we would give ourselves authority over. We did not, in that first 5 years when we were trying to merge governments, do the kind of deep dive that you're willing to take on today. And so I'm grateful that the president has formed this ad hoc committee. I'm really appreciative of the work that you've done pulling all this together, because I think it's impressive just to walk in and say we have 66 boards, which I think most people on the council wouldn't have known. So, and not myself included, right? And I was involved in redoing some of this. But now that we're 20 plus years in and we are taking a more serious look at this, when we did what we did 20 plus years ago, we didn't dive into where the authority came from or when it was created or any of that. All we did was say, is this a board or commission that either regulates or generates or expends revenue? If they generated revenue or spent, or decided how revenue was spent, we wanted approval authority. That's why we did it. And I'm trying to remember, I don't think we asked for approval authority, and this was part of the reason the 109 board comes to mind. We did not initially, I don't think, ask for approval authority over boards and commissions that could establish policy that would have implications across the enterprise, right? Because if you think about it, how would you, and this was our struggle, how would you do that? Like, how would we decide which kinds of policies we wanted to have approval authority over? It was easy. We knew right away if this board or commission generated revenue, we wanted approval authority, right? We also knew if that board or commission expended revenue in large amounts, we wanted approval authority. But short of that, we didn't get into this level of depth. And so my hope is, you had asked earlier what we'd like to see. My hope is that we can get into that level of depth. I would love for us to have a list somewhere. I think that's a good starting point.
Councilman Leninger.
Yeah, to piggyback on Councilman Kramer's penultimate comments on the creation of the list and how we do not here in this list have a full final legal list of these boards, these commissions, their makeup. We should have that, and it should be publicly available. That's something that should be absolutely available to the public. This is a serious transparency issue. Here we are, elected members of local government, and we're scrambling. We've got 4 lists, getting ready to make a 5th. Who knows where it'll end? Where we're trying to compile all this information. Meanwhile, we can easily imagine a member of the public who has similar questions about any one of these boards, and they might be throwing their hands in the air. They don't even know where to start. We've got a place to start here, but it does not provide all the information that it should. Whatever we come up with in terms of a list that is more comprehensive, that has the information that Councilman Kramer has listed and what we've been talking about, I would hope that it is a final work product of this ad hoc committee to try to find a way that that's going to be a public-facing, permanent home for people that want to find information about their local government.
Absolutely, and circling back to what Councilman Winkler said, what does the application process look like? How transparent is that? Are people told why they aren't selected? And then also, like, how long do I sit on the reserve bench? You know, I think that's, you know, if you call somebody a few years later and be like, hey, you applied for this. Would you like to do it? And they're like, no, I live in, you know, Oklahoma now. So, Councilman Leninger.
Yeah, really quickly to add on to that, having spent a couple of meetings now in government accountability and going through the appointments, there was one time that we were looking at a couple of different applicants who were former members of council to a couple of different seats. And on the tree advisory committee, or commission, or whatever it is that it's listed as, one of the members sitting in the applicant queue was Cindy Sullivan. And I saw that and I said, why are we considering these people when Cindy Sullivan is, asked to be is asked to apply? And I showed it to Councilman Reno Weber, and he's like, because she's in his district. And he said, oh, well, I'm sure we'll get her in the next round. And I showed him, he said, well, it says here that she's been sitting here since 2018 asking for appointment. And he's like, well, that seems insane. But then we looked at the final list. She actually is already sitting on these boards. So even in our internal documents and when we're considering these applications, when we have the list of current applicants, sometimes that list is not accurate. And we're looking at people who are already approved. It would be great to have, again, a little more consistency in public available information.
I've been hooting and hollering about that for 2 years. So I think that's why they said, Jennifer, you're going to be on this committee. So is the information that we're getting up to date and accurate? I think that's really important. Before I get to our action items and then adjourn us, is there anyone else that has any questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I would just say this. What if we, or the staff or whoever, just sent some kind of letter and said, explain yourself to the chairman of this committee, and not that we would rely on that, Kevin. That's not going to be the final thing, but it will give us a place to start, because I got a feeling this is going to be a heck of a chore for a researcher to go back, because these boards, they get created here and there, and they have such different parameters of how they elect folks. Like, I know, just looking up here, that suburban fire districts are all part of KRS Chapter 75. I'm reading here. They get elected, so that would be a KRS deal. And I didn't know that at the beginning of the meeting. It just started ringing a bell. What's a Chapter 75? They're proud of being Chapter 75. The cities are some other chapter, and there might be a third chapter out there. But it'd be almost like, make them come forth, give us what they've got. Who are you? What do you do? Who gave you the authority? And then we take it from there and do the research, because they might be able to cut down on the research needed. Because if you told me go find the creation of one of those boards up there, I mean, if it wasn't for Google or search or the county attorney or somebody, I wouldn't even know where to start. So anyway.
Thank you. I think that, that I just added this. We have a couple more columns that we need to add to one of our spreadsheets, and that's who's the chair of each one of these boards, and then, who's the contact, what is their contact information, because I don't know if that list already exists, but when you say reach, I love the idea of reaching out to them and holding them accountable, and I love who gave you the authority. I love that you said that. But I think that we need to understand who those people are first. So we're going to do some research there and try and get that information.
Each board at least has a mailing address, right? You think?
So I was looking, this is Sonia Harvey, the clerk. I was looking in the site, our side of that website that you showed. So we can actually update that information. We can, like, let's say that was by KRS, and the one that I showed you, the Anchorage one, it also had an LMCO, right? So we could actually be the ones that update that. I think that would be our job to do that, not Althea's. There is a spot for contact information, an email address. So if Althea would provide that to us, there is Althea is the one who updates the board members and such, current board members. So sometimes I know that we have questions about what the current board is as well. I'm sure that she just gets overwhelmed. There's a lot of appointees and stuff. So sometimes we reach out to her and she corrects it for us. Yeah, all of that's possible. And we can, on the website that you're looking at, all the information that we gather, I'm pretty sure we could probably get most of it put on that website so that you have one place to find all of the things that you're asking for. So we can make that work.
Thank you. If there's no more questions, then I'll just go through action items for next time. First off, I'm going to invite Althea to our next meeting, and I'm also going to be sending her some questions in the interim just to kind of fill in the blank spaces that we have. And one of those questions will be, do you already have contact information for each board? Because in terms of mailing address too, I'm not sure, they're spread out all over the place. So good information to have. So I'm going to invite Althea, send questions to Althea. I'm also going to send all of the board members each one of these lists so you can download it and dissect it in your own way. And then lastly, I will be asking each of the board members to create a list of 5 tasks or initiatives or boards, commissions that you would like to prioritize in investigating. And then we'll see where the overlap is. But our next meeting, we'll have that conversation with Althea, hopefully have a little bit more comprehensive list, and then kind of go from there. And then I'll also see about working on some sort of correspondence to all the chairs of each one of these boards to say, hey, can you send us information on what you're working on? And we'd love to hear more about what you're doing. So if that sounds good to everyone, then we can adjourn if we've got a motion. We did it anyways. All right. Have a great night, everyone.